Today was Sir Keir Starmer's worst day as Prime Minister. He's currently so toxic that polonium looks at him and runs away. The latest poll put Reform about 10 points ahead, and he's lost the red wall. So his team of crack advisors said, go to the red wall, win them back, slag off Nigel Farage. They'll love that, Sir Keir. Here's what happened.
I've got Peter from The Guardian.
Do you think one of the problems is that Nigel Farage can approximate talking like a human being, where you just resort to talking points and dodging questions?
He's lost The Guardian.
Reform UK say you're running scared of them, that you're sounding increasingly like them with some of the policies and announcements you've made recently. This is a speech that was very defensive, wasn't it?
He's lost Sky News.
Let me go to Chris Hope. Chris.
Chris Hope, GBNews. Prime Minister Nigel Farage has 5 MPs. You've got 403. Are you panicking because Reform is so far ahead in the polls, it seems? Is he living rent-free in your brain? You went to a state school. Your dad worked in a factory. Your mum worked in the NHS. So why has a public school-educated former city trader got more in common with the red wall than you have?
He's got Nigel Farage living rent-free in his head, and just in case he wasn't absolutely sure, he's being told how unpopular he is.
The speed of the decline in your popularity is historically unprecedented. Isn't this speech today an admission that you have failed and Nigel Farage understands voters better than you?
And now people are just pointing out to him that he's not actually delivered on anything that he said he would when he got elected.
You went into the election promising to freeze national insurance and keep the two-child benefit cap. You've since raised national insurance on businesses, and now you're considering axing the cap. Isn't attacking Nigel Farage's economic credibility a bit rich?
Yikes. And then, after all that, he has the temerity to say that he's more trustworthy than Nigel Farage.
And that's the question you have to ask about Nigel Farage. Can you trust him? Can you trust him with your future? Can you trust him with your jobs? Can you trust him with your mortgages, your pensions, your bills? And he gave the answer on Tuesday, a resounding no. He set out economic plans that contained billions upon billions of completely unfunded spending. Precisely the sort of irresponsible splurge that sent your mortgage cost, your bills, and the cost of living through the roof.
Pensioners, farmers, business owners, people who care about not giving away British sovereign territory, people who pay energy bills, the disabled, private school parents, just some of the people who might feel as though Sir Keir Starmer hasn't been entirely honest with them in his first 10 months as PM. And all he's got now is to try and say how working class he is.
Like Nigel Farage, I know what it's like growing up in a cost of living crisis. I know what it's like when your family can't pay the bills, when you fear the postman on the bills that may be brought.
Look, nothing screams being in touch with the public like delivering a series of speeches in secure, sterile locations surrounded by security. He can't go and meet working class people because this happens.
That man is not allowed in my pub. Get out of my pub. Go on. Get out of my pub.
Yeah. Today's absolute disaster confirmed one thing. Sir Keir Starmer is only about 10 months in, and he's already finished. Let's get the thoughts of my panel. We've got former Conservative MP Jane Stevenson, Tory peer Lord Bailey, and former Labour Party advisor Matthew Larzer. Jane, let's start with you. That was pretty devastating, that, for Sir Keir Starmer, wasn't it, really? Getting mauled by every single member of the press.
Yeah, but I'm not surprised. I mean, he was never popular. In the whole of the general election campaign, I met 2 people out of hundreds and hundreds of doors. There was no love for Labour in the Black Country, and it was all about that vote being split between Reform and the Conservatives. So I don't know why Keir Starmer's particularly confused that he's getting a bad reception, but he did look a little bit shell-shocked, I thought.
Yeah, he did. Just to say as well, at 10 p.m, we are going to be hearing live from Nigel Farage. A couple of things. Apparently got a big policy announcement specifically aimed at the 18 to 30s. No, it's not a cruise in the Med. Oh, it might be. We don't know, do we? But apparently he's also got a couple of things to say about Sir Keir Starmer. But Sean, I'll bring you in on this. I mean, he is now in the red wall, being ripped apart by everyone. Is it game over for him already?
So I'm the opposite. I'm completely surprised that the press have turned on him. One of the features, I believe, of Starmer's premiership and before he was Prime Minister is that the press have been very, very gentle with him, very gentle. And what went on in that room today, I thought, was a complete reversal of where they've been up till now. If they keep that pressure on, I think he could go. The problem with having so many MPs is that they can form really big clumps and come after him. And with a two-child benefit situation, I think he could be in trouble. And with the winter fuel, you've seen where it is. I think everybody now is hounding him, and he's learning what I tell everyone. It's not as easy as it looks.
Well, no, I also wonder if there was another catastrophic mistake that he made several times today. We've got a little clip here, right? And this is the amount of times that he mentioned Nigel Farage. Here you go.
The reason I'm speaking out today in relation to Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage. Farage. Nigel 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 Farage.
Matthew's rattled, isn't he?
No, I mean, look, clearly reform has to be taken very seriously. Let's remind ourselves that we may be seeing a huge change in British politics. The Conservatives are either in a very poor third or in fourth place in the opinion polls. You have lots of people saying, is this a moment like that after the First World War when the Liberals when the Labour took over from the Liberals as the party, the main party of the centre left. So it was clearly a come-out fighting speech. I think a lot of Labour MPs today are happy to hear him come out fighting. I wonder how many times...
What was the fight?
I wonder how many times Nigel, in his speech earlier in the week, said Keir Starmer. It was quite a few. I'm not sure whether we had the time. The fight was very clear. The fight was on policy. The fight was on the fact that Nigel Farage seems to have found a magic money tree where he thinks that taking down a few pride flags is going to fund a revolution in public services.
He wants to end net zero, shut down asylum hotels and get rid of DEI. So
asylum hotels use is going down anyway. Nigel, what's going to happen on the first day of a Nigel Farage premiership? He's going to open the doors of the asylum hotels, or he thinks somebody's going to sort of push everybody into the... One important point, Patrick, is on the best line I thought he had, which you haven't used, is about Jaguar Land Rover, one of Britain's leading companies, where because they put out an ad that some people thought was a bit woke, Nigel, in his crash way, said, "I hope they go bust." And Keir said to them, "Why don't you come and say that to the JLR workers?" So the other day when Nigel was saying, "Come to the Red Wall," I'd love to see Nigel stand in front of those workers and tell them he thought they should go bust because of one commercial.
OK, all right, Jada, do you think that he made a mistake there mentioning Nigel Farage so many times?
That's a lot of mentions. If Nigel Farage is mentioning Keir Starmer, he's our Prime Minister, whether you like that or not. So there is good reason to mention Keir Starmer. But I think clearly Labour have recognised where their problem is, because in the Black Country and seats like I represented, it is people who go to the pub, they like Nigel, they think they can identify with him, the same way they like Boris Johnson.
They don't like Kemi, though, do they?
Well, they don't know Kemi yet, so I think she's got time to cut through a little bit.
Does that say that in the Red Wall they prefer Jeremy Corbyn's Kemi Badenoch? This is the figures.
But Kemi, I tell you the difference with Kemi. Kemi hasn't and won't make the mistake that Keir Starmer's made. Kemi doesn't pretend to be one of them. Keir Starmer is. They don't want him. And what's interesting about Keir Starmer, he's not leaning into being the PM. He shouldn't refer to Nigel in that way. The comment that is Nigel living rent-free in his head, absolutely. But more importantly, also his advisors. His advisors should have said, you come out and dismantle Nigel, because Nigel will also find out it's not quite as simple as it looks. But don't make Nigel your equal, and that's exactly what he's done.
I'll sit with you and I'll get your views on this, Matthew. But Keir Starmer's been making a virtue, in my view, wrongly, about how working class he is and how much he resonates with it and how much he understands the working class versus Nigel Farage, because the
stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. Nigel looks like your uncle. He's a geezer you bump into the pub. There's 50 million Nigels in this country. Exactly. If you got off of your chair now and walked down the pub, you'd find Nigel Farage. And the fact that Keir Starmer doesn't identify that is why Labour will have a problem in the future. Look, let's be clear. Up until now, reform has been a Tory problem. It's been a problem for the Tories, and now going to become a problem for Labour.
Matthew, I'll put that to you. I absolutely get that on paper, Keir Starmer is, quotes unquote, more working class than Nigel Farage. OK, fine. But I think he's done everything in his life to try and get away from them, hasn't he? Surrounded himself by multi-millionaire international lawyer types. You know, he's got his £2 million pad in Islington or wherever else. I don't really think he's in broad... I mean, he doesn't look like the kind of guy that I think would like to go to a Wetherspoons, does he?
I'm sure he does go to a Wetherspoons. Look, Nigel can pose with a pint outside a pub or all he likes. Nigel's a very pleasant chap. But on the other hand, he is a privately educated city trader.
Well,
And Nigel doesn't live in a 2 up, 2 down in Hartlepool, however much you like to pretend he does.
Again,
look, what we've had... what's hilarious about this conversation is we have 2 Tories here, and the fact is the Tories are an utter and total irrelevance.
No,
I'm not changing the subject. Things are so bad for the Tory party, Sean, but he didn't... Do you know who he didn't mention once? Kemi Badenoch. Because you know where she's in Ibiza? Irrelevant, and she'll be out of a job soon.
Let me say 2 things.
I'm told she's in Ibiza.
Let me say 2 things to you. Firstly, Nigel Farage is more working class than Keir Starmer ever will be, because he's the type of working class person that working class people want to be. They're ambitious for themselves and their children. Yeah. The idea that you have to be working class and poor is ridiculous. That working class people don't want to be poor. That's the first thing. And let's be very, 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 very clear. Keir Starmer is nothing like the working classes, and they're aware of it.
Neither's Nigel.
I don't buy Keir Starmer's poor me, gas bills unpaid. He went to Junior Guildhall. I went to the Guildhall School of Music. He was a junior scholar there, playing 3 instruments, which is very unusual. Most kids, working class kids, do not play flute, violin and something.
I think some working class kids do learn an instrument.
No, they do, but they don't travel to London.
I agree with you. I don't think it's healthy in politics to have a kind of pro-Lib male discussion. Kemi did, of course, once tell us that she knew what workers felt because she did 3 days in a McDonald's in Wimbledon, but that was an embarrassing...
I'll put you, as former Labour Party advisor, right, would you have advised Sir Keir Starmer to go to a series of very sterile areas in the Red Wall and give a speech that relentlessly referenced Nigel Farage and then take an absolute self-inflicted battering from the press?
Well, because it was a wholly political speech, it wasn't a policy speech. The press are always going to ask you tough questions because it's not like they're not an announcement they can question you on and say, you know, how many new schools, how many new hospitals is this? The truth of the matter is he needs to come out fighting. The whole Labour Party needs to show up that Nigel is a con man.
He hasn't
I thought it was much better, genuinely, and I'll be critical of him from time to time. I was rewatching the clips just before we came on air. I genuinely thought it was a much better, more relaxed and punchy performance than usual.
4 years from an election, why isn't he focusing on making the country better, not on Nigel Farage?
He is, and he gives policy speeches most of the time. This is recess week, so this is the time to do a political speech.
Ultimately, Matthew's correct. He does have to come out and fight Nigel, but not in the way he does. He today has made Nigel Farage more important than he was yesterday. The speech was terrible, the idea was terrible, and the execution was also terrible. Nigel would have been over the moon watching that being referred to.
Well,
he made Nigel his equal today, and he should not be doing that.
Well, there we go. So, again, I will tell you, in fact, you can see it on your screens now if you are watching us on telly or online. At 10 p.m, we're expecting to hear live from Nigel Farage. What we've been told is that there is a policy announcement in there for 18 to 30-year-olds, a core demographic, increasingly a number of people who are, of course, going towards reform. So that'll be interesting. But I'm also reliably informed there'll be a couple of spicy lines about Sir Keir Starmer in there as well. So watch this space.